Happy 4th of July, everyone. Zachary Weiss, Pittsburgh Golf Now, coming at you. Back in Pittsburgh after spending a couple of days at the U.S. Senior Open, the 46th playing of the U.S. Senior Open at Scioto Country Club in Upper Arlington, Ohio, right in the Columbus area. Was not able to make it today, but do have this round recap for you where after 54 holes, it is Stewart Cink looking to finish one better than he did in last year's playing, as he leads Padraig Harrington by one stroke at the U.S. Senior Open here. Stewart Cink is a guy that's been steady Eddie. He leads the Charles Schwab Cup points race this season, and it's been a little bit of a tough going for him in terms of finding form. He was very honest. It had been several weeks since he had had a start, last reflecting at the PGA Championship, so it's been a second there for Stewart Cink, and it felt like both of his first nines, and both the first and second round respectively, were a little bit challenging coming out of the gates, and he had to remind himself about commitment and shot shaping. And he mentioned the Denny Green mentality, where was what he thought it was and let him off the hook, and didn't let it off the hook in the first round. And then yesterday's round, he mentioned his caddy Chris Jones and how he's a very big part of his pre-shot routine, especially with his putting. And it was a much better start coming out of the gates for Stewart Cink. A 4-under start, including an eagle on the par 5 6th hole, really got it going. And then after the birdie on the 16th hole, he was able to bring it back together to keep a clean card the rest of the way. A 64, which ties for the lowest round in the entire tournament playing this week. So really, really good for him there. He was really happy with his shooting. It was a little bit better for him, and he mentioned the conversations he had once again with Jones about the commitment level, something that he also mentioned yesterday as well. So it does look like it's going to be a duel between himself and Padraig Harrington. So reflecting on Padraig, who is the defending champion of this major tournament, Padraig had a little bit of a slow start. In fact, he was actually trailing round leader George McNeil by 5 shots almost towards the end of the front nine. It was before he birdied, even with the birdie, I believe, to get him back to 4 under here on the par 5 6th. So really what seemed to turn Padraig's round around was the par save that he had on the 8th hole, and then he was able to turn it into some momentum with 3 consecutive birdies, then a par on 12 and birdie to have a share of the lead there for a little bit, but he did flinch on 18. Harrington's week is one where it seemed like he paced himself round 1, and after round 2, it seemed like he really was talking about the flat stick, the putter being really good to him. It seemed like he had figured something out with his putting game, and he was second in the field in putting coming into the round today, so was really able to get it together. Giving one back, obviously not ideal for him. Looking at his transcript of his press conference, he was talking that he played okay, but he just couldn't. He was just feeling it a little bit after when he was all those several shots behind, but it's quality U.S. Open, USGA setup, just hanging in there and just finding a way to make it your turn for a run, and that's exactly what it was. And again, both the two of them, and again, George McNeil, really did take advantage. Normally they're playing at give or take 2 o'clock, and this time, because of the threat of rain, they went in threesomes off of splits, so the final trio here of leaders went off at 9 in the morning as opposed to 2, and were able to take advantage of a little bit more optimal conditions. So that's really what it boiled down to. So that's kind of what his mindset was looking into it. And yes, it does set up a little bit different, same but different here. They're going to do the same thing, threesomes and split tees. They're going off about 15 minutes earlier than they did today. So again, a really good opportunity to score, and it will be a lot of people looking at these two once again, mano a mano. Will one of them be able to pull it out over the other? That remains to be seen, but there really are understanding that there is a chess match there, but there are other guys in it as well. One of those, of course, being second round leader George McNeil, who had that quick start. He had the birdie on 2, he eagled the 6th, and at that point led Stewart Cink, his closest pursuer, by 3 shots. But that 8th hole has been the hardest on property this entire week, and that 8th hole giveth, that 8th hole tooketh, and even with getting over the water on the 8th, just made a mess of the hole, and it turned into a double bogey. And he did bounce back the next hole on the par 3 9th with a birdie, but that would be his last birdie for the round, and it allowed the other two to kind of catch up. So a 1 under par 69, not the end of the world. He's still in the final pairing, so immediately if he can apply some pressure, then that's something that would really, really play as well. Looking at his press conference, it felt like he was able to kind of put things together, and then the puller swing on 8, the pull hook off the tee, really started to keep things going, but it seemed like the wind played a factor where he couldn't quite figure it out. But ball striking's the name of the game for George McNeil. He's won multiple times on the PGA Tour, and if you count Q School, he's won 3 times, so he's something that he mentioned as well. So it will be a little bit interesting how it plays for him. Will there be nerves? Will there not be nerves? In a sense, he's playing with house money again, and it didn't seem like he was afraid. He was very decisive on that front 9 with decision-making, and he was eager and felt like he could go low again today, and he could have, but the 8th hole really seemed to stunt a lot of things for him, and it led to maybe a little bit of uncertainty. So that's something to keep an eye on moving forward. Looking at the rest of the leaderboard as we continue on, of course, Miguel Angel Jimenez is a guy that strikes the page. Of course, he was the runner-up in this position 10 years ago at the last playing at Scioto Country Club, losing to Gene Sowers, and here he is again, firing a 67. He's bettered his play by 1 shot every single day, and of course Miguel Angel Jimenez is the defending champion at next week's Call It Companies Championship, which I will be on the grounds for the weekend to cover as well. So it's a really good time of year for Miguel Angel, and it does seem like he did mention after the first round that the course maybe suited his eye a little bit better 10 years ago than it did now, but the reviews across the board from these golfers really have been overwhelmingly positive, which could bode well for a return down the line. It seems like obviously the history speaks for itself. Any property that has Bobby Jones as a champion and Jack Nicklaus, this is where he grew up learning the game of golf, really it speaks for itself. Looking at the leaderboard, Paul Stankowski's kind of been in the mix throughout, so credit to him. Darren Clark with a 64, a heck of a round by him. Looking at that round, that is a round that was bogey-free, which is really, really hard to do, even with the earlier tee time. Birdied 4, birdied 5, eagled 6, and then had another 2 on 11 and 12, and just kept the card clean. Darren Clark's a guy that probably could have been in the mix. He had 3 birdies on the front side of his first round and then just went cold and just lost his swing a little bit. And that's easy to do at Scioto Country Club. The fairways are generous, but if you miss the fairway, it's extremely tough. Kind of sounds a little familiar with some other tracks that are in and around the area as well, but that's kind of the name of the game. Clark had an opportunity and just wasn't able to completely cash in on it, but there's nothing to say that he can't go low again tomorrow. Really, the course is set up where he has that opportunity, and there's more moisture that's affected the golf course, and even with the hot weather, it's still going to be gettable if he's able to go low. Another guy to kind of spot shadow here is the amateur Haim Snedeker. Mentioned him in my article yesterday. The low and only amateur that is still in the field. The brother of Brand, of course, a several-time PGA Tour winner, and he's the President's Cup captain for Team USA this year. So Haim's really doing well. An even par round, he's at +1. He's tied for 22nd right now. So had a bogey on 5, a birdie on 12, and then otherwise you're looking at 16 pars. So good on him for figuring some things out. You could see the comfort level starting to really go through, and it's one of the things, it does feel a little bit unbelievable. There's a surreal feeling, right? There hasn't been an amateur really that's made the cut in the last 2 playings of this tournament, so it's a feather in his hat, absolutely, and he had an opportunity to get to the course a week prior, so last Saturday, and was able to attack. So it'll be interesting to see when the dust settles tomorrow who comes out on top. I think on the outside it's going to look like it's a title fight between, of course, Sink and Harrington, with McNeil and maybe Jimenez the opportunity to play spoiler. I wouldn't count any of them out, and I think that potentially if Darren Clark or Paul Stankowski can go low, they could still have some equity in this game, depending on how quickly they start on their front side. But that's the story of round 3. It'll be anxious and definite curiosity to see how round 4 can go. But for now, this is Zachary Weiss, Pittsburgh Golf Now, signing off. Again, enjoy your 4th.